Well, welcome back. I am Keith Reynolds, not Mark Cook. Mark had to step out for today, so we'll see him next week. But I'm here with my lovely show Charlene Chamberlain. And as always on Friday, it is Friday with Carole. So
right.
Carole Moore has joined us today for another educational show. Carole, welcome.
Thank you. They say once a teacher, always a teacher. So
absolutely. I love when you come in because I feel like I'm back at school.
Well, when I stand at the line to buy my movie ticket, the poor people behind me or in front of me get a full education, and I actually say to them, I'm sorry you're getting all this information. I'm a school teacher, and
right.
we never stop.
No.
But today we're talking about quilts.
Oh,
okay,
right. I see
good.
you brought your collection.
This is a 10th of my collection.
Now, are you a quilter? Were you ever a quilter?
I have made lots of quilts, but I make what is called a utilitarian quilt.
Yes.
Now, when I was in Beach Haven and my bed and breakfast down there, the previous managers only were open for the summer season, the 10 weeks of the season, but we love the shore any time of year. So we opened at Easter and closed at Thanksgiving, but this is a beach house. There is no heat. So fortunately there was a little fabric store down the street, and I said to Bill, when you go home to cut the grass, bring me my sewing machine, and I made about 25 quilts just for the beds so that you had them. But the quilting is a part of history, and having your own new dress 100, 200 years ago was really, really big deal.
Yes.
So the first oldest sister got the dress, and it was bright red. And when she outgrew it, the middle sister wore it, and by that time it was kind of like a dark pink. And finally the little sister fit the dress, and it was now pale pink. And there were no more kids to trade it to drop it down to, so it was not going to be thrown away.
No, nothing was then.
It could not be, because one piece of fabric had to be like little threads that you sew a button on with, woven back and forth by hand.
Yes.
They didn't have the machinery that we have now. And we have such a throwaway culture now. You wear it, you decide you don't like it, you toss it. So this is what happened. After all the sisters have worn this red dress, it was the buttons were pulled off and saved, and the fabric was cut into as big a pieces as it could be to make something else. And when it got past that, it was made into a quilt. So some of the quilts that I brought today are really interesting. This is a cool, just something you can do with an antique quilt.
That's a lot of calico in there.
And what this is my mother-in-law made this into a quilt. And my mother-in-law's probably 120 years old now. And the tiny little squares, the patience, she made it when she was 16 years old.
Wow.
Now most of it deteriorates. Remember, fabric does not last. So what I did for all her sisters was I made a frame of good pieces like that and gave them to all the sisters.
Nice.
So this is over how old?
That's over 100 years old, yeah. And what I did learn from doing quilting myself, so whenever you use a dark fabric that is over 75 years old, in order to keep the color content in the fabric, they used arsenic. Therefore, in all your 100-year-old quilts, the navy blue, the black, and the brown are threads. They just deteriorate because the arsenic ate away the fabric.
Right.
And this is one that I made that
it's like a doily
it
quilt.
is a doily, yes. And you use them for whatever you want to use them for. And that was one that was, and it's reversible.
Oh, this is cute.
This is one that my mother got.
It's like a pot holder.
Yes, that is a pot holder. And if you stop and think, my mother and I were sewers, and the slogan we all had on our wall was, "She who dyes with the most fabric wins."
And these are
they're spools. They're spools of thread.
Yeah, but these now, Carole,
these
are these done with sewing machines?
No.
Hand sewn and sewing machine.
Okay.
Many times these days, people are not doing the hand sewing.
No.
They're doing the machine sewing. This is actually a pillow cover that I bought for my mother, and it's the sunrise. And a young woman was quilting. but it's already starting to
See,
deteriorate,
yeah.
and that's your problem.
And that's sewing machine stitched.
And that's sewing machine stitched.
Right.
Yeah. And lots of times the people who do the quilting never really get around to putting a back on it. Now here's another piece. Now look how tiny
Look how
those
little that is.
squares are.
Mhm.
That's part of that same piece that was on here. Now this one is over 150 years old. And this will show you exactly what I'm talking about, the chemicals killing
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
See the dark, see
Yeah,
how
you
the
can see.
fabric is just
Just shreds. Yeah.
turns to shreds. So I had a lady brought me this one. She said her mother died, and this was in the attic in little pieces. Okay. And her mother had never finished it.
Wow, that's pretty nice.
And
nice.
look at the teeniness of these pieces,
Yep.
right?
But you see, and I know you're going to probably talk about this too. Quilting was an activity that women did, and it was like we would go out for coffee with our girlfriends. They would all get together and they would all quilt, and they would lay this piece out on their table, and they would each take a section, and they would sit there for a couple of hours and sew and talk, and that was how the women gathered together and shared.
It was a way, it was called a quilting bee, and it was a way of sharing information. Your farm may be 20 miles from the next
That's
farm,
right.
and this was your way of getting together and doing it.
Quilting bee.
And
Yeah.
yes, a quilting
Quilting bee.
bee. And usually when a new a girl got married in the community,
They created a
they
quilt
made
for
a
her.
quilt for
Wedding
her. That
quilt.
was her wedding present. And many quilts, as I started to say, are not finished. People start them, and it's a big, big project.
Yes, it
So
is.
this one was sitting in the attic
It has a back.
for years and years. And the very first thing when you find, I do a lot of restoration of quilts, and when you find one that is not complete, does not have a backing on it, the first thing you have to do before you wash it is to stabilize it. Take any piece of fabric that you have
Right.
and sew it
To the
to
back.
the quilt as a stabilizer. And then you can wash it. You can't put it in the dryer, but you can hang it on the line, because the putting it in the dryer is really detrimental. So that is the one that my girlfriend's mother died, and this was in the attic in little pieces, and she said to me, I don't want that thing, it's all dusty and dirty. And I said, well, I'll clean it up
Restore it.
for you, put a back on it, and give it back to you. No, I don't want it, you can have it. I said, I'll keep it then.
Yeah.
So that's another good one. The one that I like the best, I could not bring it, is way too big, and it is one my mother made, and it was never quilted. Okay, you can have a coverlet, which has no fluff inside
Right.
whatsoever, or you can have it for warmth, which will have all kinds of stuff
Filler.
inside. And it was made by my mother with all of the material pieces that she made clothes for my twin daughters.
Oh,
So
the
my twin
leftovers.
daughters could say, oh,
I had that dress.
Grandma made that was my pajamas,
Aw,
and that
that's
was my dress.
fun.
And then that's the
How
one
fun
that
is
means the
that?
most. Commercially, they do get into, this is a commercially made,
Yes.
but notice the pattern.
It's pretty.
The detail. This is probably made by some little Chinese factory where people get paid $1 a minute, $1 an hour, or
Not a dollar a
whatever.
minute. If they are, I'm going.
To do this type of detailed work. It's handwork that's no longer done here
No.
in America, but it is to be recognized
You know,
because
I don't find that most people don't sew anymore. When I was in school, well, we had home economics, of course, but I also took private sewing classes.
I
Absolutely.
also took sewing lessons. The one that was famous in the 70s was called Stretch and Sew,
Yes.
which was great because polyester had just been invented. The
And you
stretchy
didn't know how to
material.
sew
Polyester.
on that with a machine.
Yes, and you had to stretch and sew it.
Right.
Stretch another couple inches and sew it. But that would not be a fabric that you used
Oh, no,
for
absolutely
quilting.
not.
My mother used all of her polyesters, and she cut them into strips and made rugs. Because polyester is a fabric that never, ever goes bad.
What's the little one that looks like flowers? I forget what that's
Oh.
called. I love those.
This
Those
is
are
called
fun.
a yo-yo quilt.
That's it. Look
My
at that.
grandmother and I started this 40 years ago. It's
that
still not
fun?
finished.
Wait, that's the other side.
Now you must understand how a quilt works. A quilt works by capturing air. The air is then warmed, and the warm air warms you. And that's
This
how
is
a
so
quilt
fun.
works. And show them, there's one that's coming apart.
Yeah,
Show
right
them,
here,
where is
blew
it
up.
so we can
Here
see
it is.
All right,
Blew
what
up.
this is, it's so easy to do. It's a circle of fabric. You run a stitch around the outside, pull the string
To
the
tighten
thread,
it, yeah.
and it makes a little pocketbook.
Right.
Then you flatten the pocketbook and you stitch them together.
Like a chain, like a daisy
Exactly,
chain almost.
and the way
Isn't
it
that
keeps
cute?
you
That is
warm
insane.
is
That's
Isn't that amazing?
unbelievable.
you see all the little holes between the circles?
Yeah.
This goes over your sheet. This is where a quilt goes, over your sheet but under your bedspread. Because it's captured there, what it does is it
It's like a
captures
layer.
every little bit of warmth that your body produces and holds it into these areas.
It's a yo-yo.
That's the yo-yo quilt.
We're gonna make you a jacket out of this.
That's,
Yo-yo
that's
jacket.
really cool.
I know. Isn't that
Before
cool?
we go any further, we have to take a
Oh, we
commercial
do.
break.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
So we're going to be right back after this commercial break with Carole, Friday with Carole. I'm Keith Reynolds here with Charlene Chamberlain, my show co.
Stay tuned.
Choosing the right fence for your home or business is an important decision to make. Choose a Nello fence for peace of mind. Our family has manufactured and installed beautiful maintenance-free fence for over 50 years. We provide vinyl, aluminum, and wood fence in a wide variety of styles and colors, including chain-link fence for commercial and residential. Call or visit our indoor showroom and ask for Steve Anello and see how 4 generations of combined experience mean that you'll get quality and service that can't be matched by any other fencing company, period. Call Anello Fence today for a free estimate.
Today's show has been sponsored by More Than Gifts. Come see our new location in Marlton, New Jersey. Not just gifts, but more.
Beam me up, Scotty. Well, welcome back. I'm Keith Reynolds. I'm here with Charlene Chamberlain, my show co. And we are here with Friday with Carole. Carole Moore has joined us today, and we are talking quilts.
That's right.
So, Carole, I've got to be honest with you.
Do you have a quilt?
I do have quilts at home, but I
Not
did not.
these kind.
I did not make any of them. But I tell you what, usually I say I would like to do that, but that looks like a lot of
No.
tedious work. Tedious work.
It is. It does take a ton of time. And that's why many people just buy their quilts. And they buy a quilt that is just 2 pieces of solid material with some type of fluff in
Filler.
between.
Mhm.
Originally in the 1940s and 50s, they actually took cotton balls and stuffed a cotton ball in each segment of the quilt. I have those. And what has happened is the cotton balls, being a natural fabric,
Right.
fiber, has deteriorated,
Yes.
and instead of having a nice fluffy square,
it's lumpy.
you got a big lump in the
I
one
know.
corner. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
this is one up here that I wanted to show you in particularly, and it is an applique quilt. Applique means you take the fabric, make the design, and stitch it onto the material, and then
Why don't you
quilt
hold
it.
that up? That's like a
It
little
is
boy.
called the sunbonnet. This is the sunbonnet quilt. And it's all of children, 1940s. And it's all of children with the sunbonnet. So you see no
And
face.
a cat.
Yes.
And
yes.
a cat.
And a
Keith.
cat.
So that is one that was a classic quilt. This was one that you probably got as a to put in your dowry. And
Your trousseau.
your trousseau, absolutely. And again, the small teeny quilts that Bill's mother made, and the first thing I had to do was to stabilize it. And it's only large enough to be a crib quilt,
Yeah, that is small.
but that's the rest of the fabric had deteriorated. So I have cedar chests full of these, and you'll notice the piece of paper that I have on, so that when I croak and
Somebody
nobody
knows what
knows,
it is.
they'll know exactly what it is.
But
Like
they'll have this
the-
segment. They can watch
They
it.
will have
They'll
this
know.
segment, absolutely. And of course, my mother, again,
The
bought me this
star.
one. When we see something fabulous that we know we would never make
Yeah.
because it's really detailed,
Yes.
we appreciate the artwork and the
Yeah.
hours that people spend.
Sure.
So we don't
Yeah.
mind spending $40 to buy a
Right.
jewelry like this because we know it's quality
Mhm.
work. But
Now, Carole, I do have a question.
Sure.
I mean, if you're, looking to start quilting,
mhm.
There are quilting clubs around.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, is
There-
it like, well, how do you start? I mean, like, do You go to the store, grab a pattern, and put it on some type of thing to stretch it so you can sew, or like maybe that's something different. But like, how does it work?
Well, the first thing you have to do, and this is a good example of it, is just iron, wash and dry and iron your fabric. You always wash it before you go quilting.
Because it can shrink.
It can shrink, and you don't want it shrinking after you've got it,
Right.
you know. So this is an example of easy quilting. All it is a strip of cloth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you lay two pieces of material together, face to face. Stitch them together on one side, open
Turn it
them
up.
up, press it. Always press as you go. That was the main thing that I learned in quilting, because it makes all the seams lay flat. Then you take a third strip, lay it face to face, stitch it, flip it open, press it. And you can see here, Keith, that it just kind of grows. 1, 2, 3, and this is
And these are stitched too. This
Absolutely.
Is stitched to that, to that, to that, to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle.
Exactly. And then, of course, you need a backing. So you can use anything you have. I'm one to use old sheets that don't match anything anymore, and I
Right.
use them as the backing. But I would say my most precious, oh, here's a couple. This is another way of doing
That's what
quilting.
I think I
and the
was-
hoops.
One
That's
for
what I was
each of
talking
you.
about.
Embroidery hoops.
There is no way I could do this.
No, look at
This
that.
is a matter of folding, pressing,
Oh my gosh.
and then attaching.
Wow.
And it is really, really
Complicated.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you would be a master in order to do this.
Wow.
But these sell now for $120.
Wow.
These
I
are
think
made
I'm
in the
gonna become a
1940s
master.
or 50s. Yeah. And that one, I hang them on my doors to decorate. And this one that Keith has was in on a sunny spot, and it used to be bright red,
That's faded.
and it
Yeah.
has faded just from the sun.
Yeah, but you take them off this thing, and
Yeah,
what are
off
they?
the frame.
Yeah, but what
Well,
are
there's
they?
a frame inside.
just-
Yeah,
this.
there's a
It's a
frame
frame
inside.
on a
but-
frame.
They're just flat. It would be flat.
It
Yeah,
would
but
be
it has
flat.
a drawstring, so
Yes,
does it go
that's
around
just
something?
made like a pillow. You could take the wood out and you could stuff a pillow in there and pull
Yeah,
the
I can
string,
put
the
it over a
drawstring.
pillow.
'Cause
Nice.
they're
so
very
cute.
good for pillowcases as well.
This is
But
old.
look, let me grab this one here. As I said, Mother and I love to quilt, and if we found
Oh, my favorite
an
color.
apron that was quilted,
Cute. That's
we
nice.
bought it. And here you can see the actual rough seams where triangles were sewed together. Because remember, triangles make a square. And so that was one we purchased because we thought it was so neat. So I have a
And
summer
this is
camp.
your favorite one?
This is my favorite. I have a summer camp, and all my kids love my quilts. And so I said, okay, I'll let you make. They're going to make me. They made Mrs. Moore a quilt. All right. So I said, now I have 8 little girls who each want to make me a square. Okay.
Oh, look how cute.
And I said, all right, how do I hold all their designs on the square till I get around to sewing it? So I got the crazy idea I could hot glue them on, just to
did.
keep them in place. And
Before
guess
you
what?
stitch, right.
You cannot stitch through hot glue.
No, you can't.
Oh, it was terrible, terrible.
Well,
Now, in our
Here we go.
church, we have done quilts. Many churches have done quilts.
Yes.
Each family will do one square and put the family name on it. Then you put it all together.
we did one for our women's club.
Exactly. And then we have it hanging on the wall in the church.
Yeah.
So that's our story about
Fun.
quilts.
Very fun.
And as I said, the kids tried to make me a nice one. They did a real good job, but it'll be flopping. All the pieces will be flopping because they're only held on with glue, so you can never wash it, never sew it.
So the rule is don't use glue if you're quilting.
Right.
Make sure you stitch.
Yes,
Well,
indeed.
Carole, thank you so much. Once again, it's been an informative morning
Absolutely,
with you.
as always.
Thanks for bringing your collection in and sharing it with us. Can't wait to see what you have next week.
Absolutely.
We're going to jump to a commercial break, and then we're going to wrap up morning coffee. But before we wrap up, Char has a couple of things that she's dug up, some tributes
Yeah.
to some of the music world. So we'll be right back after this commercial break.